Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
I just got three things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine!
Are you ready?
It's showtime, everybody! Showtime!
It's awesome!
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone?
What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Welcome to the fucking show.
Welcome, everyone, and we're here with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ernie Fox. Ernie, what's happening, dude?
Hey, how are you?
Oh, man, it's been too long. I mean, we've known each other for, 6-7 years or so?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
So and we've, worked together, and the fact that we've had some different memories, whether we were interning or whether we were working at Radio First. You were on I believe it was the pop station, if I'm not correct, or were you on the country station?
Well, I for a time I was working Thursdays on the pop station, and then weekends on Q Country 107, and then it just ended up I was always at Q Country 107, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was really a lot of fun, and we definitely got to have a lot of cool memories, especially working through Q Country 107. So that was definitely a treat. So, I mean, as of right now, you're not working for 103.9 The Fox.
Correct.
And, as you and I both know, radio is a dying trade right now. A lot of people are doing what we're doing right now is podcasting. And, with the broadcasting kind of side of things, like this is our media now, and radio is, kind of going down the slopes a little bit.
It is, and the thing about a podcast, and you and I talked about this a little bit off air, if you're just starting in radio, you're going to get paid whatever your state's minimum wage is. And if you're fortunate enough to pick up a weekend shift or some oddball shift that they're using people's voices on, many of the times it's voice tracked now. So I know a young lady I know who's in the biz. She's on a couple of different stations, and on her main station, where she's on like 5 days a week for 4 hours, she goes in and tracks, a couple times a week. To do her shows, so she's getting paid 2 or 3 hours a week for 16 or 17 hours of broadcast time, and so that's kind of a drag too, because even if they're using you, you may only get in the studio a couple times a week, and you get paid for an hour or two to track 4 or 5 hours or whatever. So
yeah, and not a lot of people are talking in between music because many people don't want that. And even then, AI, like my brother showed me this AI DJ going back and forth on Spotify. And I'm like, that is so cool.
yeah,
The fact that they're having a little conversation like what we would do on the air and then go into a song. And it was so fascinating to me that it was AI and that was all tech kind of stuff. And now people don't like it, and also people don't like that kind of stuff because some people want to do a playlist and not have anybody talk the whole entire time. They just want to keep listening to music.
right.
So
I think there's certainly a place still for radio, and I think the real place for it is to have live people on the air at key times of the day. So your morning drive, your evening drive, even afternoons when you're in the office. So you can do call-in things, lunch games, etc., and be more interactive with the listeners. I think it's when you have a Big D and Bubba country show, or Bobby Bones, or Free Beer and Hot Wings on the rock stations, and they're in 30 markets or something every morning, so they're not local to you. They don't know what's going on in your neighborhood, kind of thing, and you're hoping that all the technology works if there happens to be, a weather emergency, a big traffic accident, all of a sudden radio still does that pretty well when it is local and there's actually somebody in the studio.
Yeah, and I'll admit that I do listen to either I don't listen to anything at all in the morning when it's like about 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work. I either listen to nothing at all, the wind that's coming off my car, or I listen to either 104.3 WOMC, just hearing that like little chit chat back and forth because my drive to work is like 5-10 minutes away, so it's not even that long. So, but we just listen to the music and off to work I am. So
Well, that's how I am. I think a lot of people are when they're on their drive. They enjoy the banter at that time. The morning shows that always seem to do pretty well are the ones where there's when we were at 103.9 the Fox with Johnny Burke in the morning, he might play 5 songs in an hour, maybe 4 between all the bits and things he has going on. And, people love him. And in that market, I think he's still the number 1 ranked show kind of thing. And so it still works effectively. I'm like you. See, I don't like to hear a ton of music either. And in the morning, if I'm driving, a lot of times I'll tune in the local news, weather, sports station so I can get traffic updates, weather, and I'm not, and I'm just, listening to whoever the anchor is, giving me the news. So.
Yeah, usually when I tune in, it's right when they come on, or they've been on for maybe about 30 minutes or so, and they're just doing their morning banter to where it's like, man, like if it's a Monday morning, right? They're like, man, this past weekend was insane. I did this and I did that and blah, 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 and you're just like, oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
As you just drive along.
Yeah, but that's the thing too, where radio, I mean, it wasn't like this is what I did as the DJ or as the on-air personality. It was trying to maybe do things of local or of weekend interest, and of course everybody's going to talk about the Lions come Monday morning and, whatever the Wings end up doing, and the Pistons are on their historic losing streak. And then whatever else, of course is going on, the big stories, of the weekend. But I really don't want to hear what Joanne Purton did, for example, on OMC over the weekend. I don't. And,
yeah, and I think that's
something that's changed a lot,
right? And I think that's kind of where our ourselves kind of divide, I guess you could say. But speaking of bits and everything like that, I have this thing that I don't know. Have you listened to the podcast at all?
I have checked in a few times when I was thinking about you. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, it is now time for the joke of the episode.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
So, what is a wintertime contract?
What is a wintertime contract? I don't know, man.
A Santa Claus.
Oh, no. Oh, man. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Do people respond well to the joke of the day?
I would say so. Yeah, I was. It's the but I mean it's the joke of the episode, and you just some people get it and some people don't, but the ones that do, fantastic.
See, that's the thing. Now you had to do a Santa thing when you're interviewing a fat guy with a white beard. We all don't want to be Santa Claus at Christmas time. Okay. I've thought many times to dye the beard after Thanksgiving kind of thing. So
now, do you get kids that come up to you and go, "I want a pony for Christmas"?
Not kids, adults, which is really funny. Oh, you look like Santa Claus. You don't do this. No, I don't, and I won't, and leave me alone. But it's kind of neat. I did. Where was I? When I was going to Specs Howard School of Broadcast and Media Arts, I was working at a McDonald's actually, and this is just a few years ago. And I was the drive-through window guy, and I took your order and took your money. And there's one lady who had come by kind of most every day and get her coffee or whatever. One day she said, "Could you be Santa Claus to my nephew and just kind of tell them to be good, and you're keeping an eye on them and stuff like that. I'll just tell them I met you at, McDonald's. So she, puts her phone up and she's recording, and I did a little ho 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 and a little message to the kid, and off she drove. So that was actually kind of fun, to tell you the truth.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's such a great story, and I've kind of always thought of going to Bronner's in Frankenmuth and thought about going and doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And dressing up like Santa and, helping out different friends, or if they don't want us pay the money to, have the kids sit on Santa's lap, then have them, sit on my lap. Because, I mean, all I need to do is just put a pillow in my belly, and then, come summertime, it's rock hard abs. You know what I'm
There
saying?
you go. My abs haven't seen sunlight in many years, so I don't need
Hey,
the pillow.
but there
regretfully.
are pretty good what is it? Photoshop things that you do.
Yes, exactly.
Which is so great. Like, you go, oh, I'm at the beach, or tanning with my hot girl, or something like that, and then you'll be like playing with the band back in the day, and it's always a treat.
Well, I do a Throwback Thursday thing on my
Yeah.
Facebook page and,
Yeah.
and sometimes Instagram, where I put my head on different things. I put my head on Jimmy Page's body and said, Throwback Thursday, remembering the time I had to step in for Jimmy Page in Chicago during the Zeppelin concert, things like that. And it's kind of fun, it's just
Yeah.
neat things to do.
So do you do the different things that you learned at Specs?
Yes, yeah, I still I had the whole Adobe suite for the last several years now, but it's really expensive, and I don't use enough of it to justify. So I'm using Canva, Canva.com for the video stuff, and I'll use Flickr to do. Or Pixlr, to do the Throwback Thursday stuff which works very much like Photoshop, and
Yeah.
and then I use Audacity to record video now rather than the Adobe. Now the Adobe stuff's great, no doubt about it, but free is always better than $500 a year. So
Yeah. And so you do this thing. I don't know how many times you do it. Do you do this every week, where it's the Fox Flicks?
yeah, it's my Sunday Fun Day,
Sunday
Fox
Fun Day.
Flicks,
Yeah.
and so I post it every Sunday. And I just, it's what I was doing on the radio. I try to find some stories that are just a little offbeat in the news, and then I try to find some kind of ending statement that is normally not true or
Right.
is just funny to tag that in. And there's a story out of Florida about two women who they weren't married, but they were partners, and the police were called to their home, and one of the women actually was threw the cat at her roommate, her partner, and the police came and said that the weapon used was feline. And so the one girl was arrested, and I thought the only thing that would make this better is if the girl who got assaulted name was Kitty, right? So I mean, you do little silly things like that, like your joke of the day, pretty much. When you get it in context, but there's just a ton of great stories. The guy in China who was really drunk and fell asleep in a shipping container. He woke up and he felt like he was flying because his container was being loaded onto a ship that was heading for the U.S. Luckily, his phone worked, and they got him off the ship, and they arrested him because he was still drunk. But it's one of those things where it's kind of an ironic twist where you have a Chinese man on a slow boat to America, right? So things like that. So
Yeah, and
I need a laugh.
those
track for
get,
that, right?
those I know, like those are so funny, to where it's those little quirky stories. And so you said that you do change it up a little bit to make it a little bit funny.
Yeah, I read a story, and it's normally a little different anyway, like people using cats as weapons, and
Right.
those kind of things. And then I just try to, is there a little closing line that I can use that'll just make it a little more fun,
Exactly. A little
and
zinger.
so yeah, and so the story is actually true always.
Yeah.
It's just a little end part. Sometimes I might lie about it, or or
Oh, of
something that's
course.
more funny than just you know.
Right. And people don't really know. You know what I mean?
I don't think so.
It's just that little zinger, because I mean, I get entertained every Sunday by your Fox flicks.
Well, that's nice.
Because
Thank you very
I'm
much.
like, where does he find this stuff? I'm like, this is terrific.
I know
Where
I
does
was
he
a
find
a
this?
60-year-old guy at Specs Howard, and we do our stuff for our radio TV class or whatever, and people would
Right.
ask me, how do you find all this stuff? And some of these people were like your age and younger, and I just figure you guys know everything, right? On the World Wide Web. And I said, man, you can Google everything. And I think the Ridiculousness Show, one of my favorite shows on TV, where
Yes.
Dave Deerdeck, I think he uses Bing, but he just puts in words and
Mhm.
finds out the videos that come out. I love that show,
Yeah.
and that's just what I do. I go to funny stories about naked people, or stupid criminals, or your funny stories, and there's a ton in the U.S. There's a million out of Florida all by themselves, and then you go to like BBC News and Sky News over in Europe, and there's crazy stuff going on there too. So it's
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
mean,
fun.
I just found this thing on Instagram. Well, first off, I saw it on a podcast, and I was like, this is a good segment to do when I have different, like I have my cop cousin Ryan. He did an interview for me way early when the whole podcast was kind of starting. He was about episode number 4 or something like that, right?
Mhm.
And the funny thing is I had to have my phone pretty much attached to the microphone and have him talk through that way, because I had him on speaker the whole entire interview. And now that I got this up and running, I would love to have him um, video chat, I guess you could say, and do this face to face kind of in a sort of way. But anyway, like I was saying, I found this interesting thing where you can look up different criminals, but
Okay, yeah.
it's so fascinating. And I'll share my screen with you in just a second. Hold on. Let's see. Da. Not that one. Not that one either. Let's see. I don't want that one. This is the fun part, because I've only been doing what is it? YouTube.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll just share this whole thing. So okay, so can you see it? Okay.
I cannot see it right now, as a matter of fact.
Oh, you can't.
No.
Oh, let's see. Browser needs to be screen sharing permission. What should I do? This is, I swear, this is the funniest thing. We'll
Well,
try.
I'm
We'll try
trying to
something.
share my screen, but I don't have anything to share with you, I guess. So I just
I
just
know.
wanted to see if
I
that part
know.
was working.
I know.
So,
Well, I'm sure you could find it on Instagram, but that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. uh,
sometimes there's still technological difficulties.
exactly, and that's the fun part about it, to where you're just like, all right, yeah, this might work. Never mind, didn't
Yep.
work. Didn't work. So, uh, but the interesting thing is, it's on Instagram and it's called Mug Shotties.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm writing that
and
down.
yeah, it's called Mug Shotties. SHAWTYS, and it shows different women who have done, different crimes and stuff like that. So like, if you go onto the site, it says here, grand theft fraudulent use of ID information and making a false statement to jurisdiction of the Department of State, scammed a bank out of $75,000 by opening up a fake car sales business and stealing someone's identity to get a car loan to her fake car sales business.
Oh, wow.
And not gonna lie, she's pretty attractive.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you know, it's always easier when you're good looking, even male or female, you know, to get away with things, I think.
Right.
That's why I
Right.
just have to toe the line on the legal side, because I just don't have the looks to get away with it. But
Exactly. It's
well, see, now you talk about stories like that, and there's a website called The Smoking Gun, and they have, basically the stories from police blotters that they include, and there's a lot of other stuff on there. And the stories are normally a little weird, like this one about a lady in Georgia who was arrested in Florida for speeding. And they found a drug paraphernalia in their car, so she was arrested. And they took her to the jail, and upon a strip search, they found she had a .22 pistol in a holster hidden in her lady parts. So,
no kidding.
So we know now not all the junk is in the trunk. Yeah, that's and it just amazes me what people come up with. You know.
Yeah. But oh my gosh, that's so fascinating. I gotta look up that smoking gun. It's smokinggun.com.
TheSmokingGun.com. Yeah,
That's fascinating.
And there's many stories. Some are funny, some are not. I mean, some are pretty legit. It's something you wouldn't share in a lighthearted nature. But
Right.
ones like that, like the lady with the things, and people assaulting people with Kentucky Fried Chicken, and just different
Right.
strange, fun stuff that is fun to share with other people when you find it. So
Yeah, exactly. So, but oh my gosh, that's hilarious. And
this is what you do when you're trying to be on the radio and do bits, right?
I know,
you do
yeah.
those deep dives to share with people.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, you kind of, riding the line, maybe between good taste and not. But then the feedback at the radio station you get on social media, you get calls into the station where people are still laughing or something when they're talking to you. And where do you find this? And it's been a lot of fun to share that either on the air or via the social media, because it's just the amazing things you can find out if you just look for them. It's incredible. The stories keep coming. So.
Exactly. And especially if you look at, like, say, Florida,
Mhm.
people are doing dumb stuff in Florida.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can Google Florida Man, and there's probably 40 pages with hundreds of things you can look at in the top 10 Florida Man moments of 2022 and stuff.
Right.
And it's almost too easy,
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing, like with the morning shows, for example, on radio, talking about that and their bits and things, a lot of them use the same show prep service, which is Wise Brothers.
Oh.
And so you might find, like, I follow a ton of radio stations on Facebook, and it's like National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day. So whether you're in LA or Washington State or Virginia or Michigan, it's chocolate, everybody's social media. Hey, what's your favorite cookie? It's chocolate chip cookie today. And so I try to avoid that kind of stuff. And because when there's national days, there's like 100 national days on the same day.
Oh, very
like maybe
true.
chocolate chip cookie one is the big one, but there might be one, Swatch Watch trading day or something. There's always something that's a little different and can make your show different. I think it's really kind of cheap and cheesy when these morning shows are just using a service for show prep, and they're really not doing a ton of work. And some of the morning shows have producers who are finding the stuff for them and just feeding it to them. So I give kudos to the people who are out there looking for their own stuff and doing it. But
yeah, isn't that nice that they have producers that look up that stuff, where you got guys like you and I that got to look up our own material?
Yeah. Spend 2 hours looking at material for a 6-hour air shift, and nobody takes that into consideration. It's not hard, But if you've enjoyed the show, it's because we really worked hard at putting something together for you. You know,
Right,
that
and
made
sometimes
sense.
sometimes it just comes to you. Like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
what was it? I had just created an episode that I do by myself if I, want to, talk about what's on my mind or send a little bit of motivation or something like that out to
Is that the
the
OnlyFans
listeners.
account too, where you?
Right. I sell my feed on there.
I know I got to have something that people would want to see. You know, pay for
exactly.
it.
Got to make the money somehow, right?
Exactly. Getting in my golden years, I'd like to not eat cat food. You know, so.
Right. So, but the show that I do through Magnificent, it's called The Rambler Diaries, and I had just come upon this thing on Facebook where Kevin McAllister's grocery bill was
Mhm.
$19.83, and now in today's world it's $72 and something cents.
Is that wild?
Yeah, yeah, and I thought that was so fascinating. I'm like, I gotta talk about this.
You know, you have to.
Yeah.
When I think about that, I always think about now. My dad was born in 1913. Okay, so he lived
Wow.
through the Great Depression, the end of World War One, the Spanish flu epidemic. He enlisted in World War II because he was uh, older than the guys they were drafting, and
Right.
he had nothing to do around here, so he figured I'll go into the army. Which I would never think that, by the way.
Right.
Um, but he would tell me, you know, when we were kids and we complain about something, he said, you know, when I was a kid, one of those things that dads do, right? And he said you can get 2 loaves of bread for a nickel and a quart of milk for a dime, and we didn't have the dimes or the nickels. You know, those kind of things where times were tough, man.
Yeah.
But if you can imagine 2 loaves of bread for a nickel, and now a single loaf, $4.50 for your whole grain zippity doo-dah stuff, and a quart of milk, I think, is better part of $2.50, $3, you know, just for a quart. So
And what's fascinates me so much, because I'm like a history buff. So what fascinates me so much is that today's kids don't understand what it was like back in the 20s, back in the 30s, and even before then, and how hard it was, how kids had to grow up. And I mean, I think it was back in the 20s, they didn't have child labor laws.
right.
So kids were going in the coal mines, kids were working and everything like that from the age of, pretty much to the time that they could, actually
Some
do work.
8-year-olds,
Yeah.
working in the textile mills back then in New York,
Right.
especially. The kids in the mines were probably 12, 13 years old, but the 8-year-olds would be doing something somewhere. And I mean, little kids were dying on the job because there were no child labor laws, and there was no OSHA back then either.
Correct.
It was just flying by the seat of the pants. And that's one things nowadays I think that's different, where I'll talk to some, like my kids who are in their 30s now and some younger, and sometimes somebody will complain about how tough life's been for them.
Right.
And then they realize, once we talk about it, but we never scrounged for food. We were never homeless. They never had to go fight in any of the skirmishes that were going on because we had to draft people. We did have a worldwide pandemic recently, but it was nowhere near the impact that the flu had back in 1918 in those times. And when you talk about children, dying on the job kind of thing, and even adults. And so, when I just mentioned my dad, I said, well, first of all, I mentioned me. From the time I was cognizant of the news, driving to pick up my dad, listening to the radio and watching, Walter Cronkite on TV. You can look it up, kids. But we were the United States was involved in Vietnam from the late 50s to 1972. So the entire time I was growing up, the Vietnam War was going on. Every day you heard, the United States killed 3,200 Viet Cong and 500 American servicemen were killed and 300 are missing. Every day you got the scorecard. So literally every day as I'm growing up, you had the death count every day from the bad guys and the good guys, I guess, maybe you put it that way. and just that whole thing that was tearing the nation apart by the 60s, certainly with the campus unrest and finally really the public pressure got us out of Vietnam. We had to hang an L on the board kind of thing, but it really was the public, I think, with so much pressure finally to just get out of Vietnam, because it was when it all came down to it, it was not worth all those lives and all those years. And so Afghanistan's rough and this and that, for some of the people who are 30 and below now, and the pandemic was tough, but again, you're not getting 16, 17 years of scoreboard death every day in a war area, and kind of being afraid as people are burning college campus, things, burning the president in effigy and things like that. And it was kind of a scary time too to be younger. And then I look back at what my dad had to face, and I think, well, I've had it pretty easy, and my kids had it double easy. But I don't know if there's a good thing. I think sometimes you have to go through difficult times in your life to grow, right? I mean, to stretch your abilities and stretch what you can handle. So.
Absolutely. I mean, it's honestly shocking to say I'm 26 and I've experienced a pandemic. I've experienced almost somewhat of a civil war, and because if you think about it, with the pandemic, you had brother against brother or father against son, and son against mother, and it goes on and on and on.
Oh yeah,
Everybody was, one side or the other, and then
exactly. People
that were for this cause or this vaccine was over here, and then people that weren't for vaccines were over here, and it tore everybody apart. And then January 6th happened, which has never been happened in American history, at least I don't believe.
Well, except for the time when we kicked the British out of there.
Well, then,
it's been a long time.
Yeah, well, then that, and then, you got...
You can argue that, and that was a horrible thing. I'm not going to try to justify it or say,
right,
that's a good thing for us, because I don't believe it was. I think it was really pretty ridiculous.
Correct.
And, but, when President Kennedy was assassinated and somebody tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan, President McKinley, you look at those. Somebody overthrew the government on those days.
Correct.
So where the insurrection was very visible and televised, and, everybody could be aghast at what was going on, and it should have been, because it was just, it seemed ridiculous in our country for that to happen.
Correct.
But, there have been these times in our history when the government's been overthrown simply with, bullets.
Yeah, and even then, I've never experienced a president die in office.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last one that died in office was John F. Kennedy,
mm-hmm.
but he was assassinated. But even before him, it was Roosevelt. So
yeah,
by disease and whatnot, or by sickness, because he died of either old age. Was it old age, or was it?
I think it was a post-polio syndrome.
Correct.
Because he had, he was wheelchair bound pretty much, and tried to hide that all through World War II, so he didn't show weakness.
Correct.
But I think there might have been other things, but I think you can kind of wrap it up to post-polio syndrome.
Right. So. Yeah. So even by disease-wise,
mm-hmm.
Because even I'm trying to think, was it Harrison? I think it was Harrison. William Henry Harrison. He died a couple of months after
90 days in,
or 90 days,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because he got sick because
he
it was
had
raining.
The longest inauguration speech.
Yeah,
ever in the history of inauguration speeches.
And it was raining, and it was cold, and he ended up getting pneumonia and dying from it.
Yeah, and so, come on, keep it short, boys. They taught us that in broadcasting school. Keep it short.
Exactly.
But yeah, and talking about, and again, growing up with different things that we've kind of been kicking that around. But I was in a classroom, a first grade class, when President Kennedy was assassinated. And he was such a favorite of younger Americans, and he was Catholic, and he was an Irish Catholic. And my first grade teacher was Mrs. Fitzpatrick, an Irish Catholic woman, and her husband, of course, was an Irish Catholic too. And we had an announcement over the loudspeakers from the principal. And this was a primary school. You know, the boomers had so many kids. We had schools that you just went from first to third grade in, and then you go to the elementary school because the elementary schools were busting at the seams, so they had to split us off for a while. So this is a primary school. So the oldest student is about 9 years old. And the principal was on the speaker and said, I want to announce that John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States, has been assassinated in Dallas. And immediately Mrs. Fitzpatrick broke into tears and ran out of the room. And that happened kind of throughout the school. And so if you can imagine leaving 35 first graders in a room all by themselves all of a sudden, has been assassinated and died in Dallas this afternoon. So we knew the president was dead. Most of us didn't know assassination, but somehow whatever she said in addition to that let us know. And so, but we were kind of shocked too because of what happened to the teacher. You know, most of us were speechless. She just immediately broke into tears and ran out of the room. And that was the kind of impact that had on the American public. And he offered such a whole new breath of fresh air in American politics and the White House, and, Jackie O and the kids running around. And it was quite a, I mean, it was a shock is an understatement. It was like the earth stopped moving for a lot of America that day and for those few days afterwards.
That's wow. That's something. I mean, the fact that you experienced that at a very young age, and then seeing your teacher have to go through that, and that's insane.
It was weird. And, times were different, and your teacher was kind of held almost more authority than your parents did in some aspects of your life.
Yeah.
So there's this woman who's kind of like a parent, but somehow kind of above parent. And she just most of us had never seen our parents probably just totally lose it like that with emotion. I mean, Dad was angry, but not this sorrow and this sadness to just, have to run out, just run away kind of thing. And it was even as little kids, we knew it was a big deal just based on that.
Yeah. Now, did you ever see your dad like cry? I don't know if your dad cried during that time or.
No, my mom did, and then I know her sisters. They talked, and they were, very broken up about it.
Yeah.
But I think my dad was concerned there was more coming. The president's dead. What else is going to happen? Why did this happen? And I think back then fathers tended to be more stoic. Just grew up in an era when pain didn't hurt and men don't cry, and you work till you die kind of thing. I mean, seriously. And so that was different. Yeah. But yeah, there were people just the neighbor ladies typically were talking about it and weeping, and especially those neighbors who were Catholic, because it meant so much to them that a Catholic could have been in the White House, which was kind of one of the Pope's going to run the country if a Catholic gets elected president kind of thing. So it was a huge deal, too, at that time. So just interesting.
Yeah.
And then it was on television, of course. And then we saw Lee Harvey Oswald walking in in garage area or loading dock area, whatever it was. And it's televised. Like, here's Lee Harvey Oswald, and he's going, to the jail and stuff. And this guy just pops out of the crowd and shoots Lee Harvey Oswald on live television. So not only did we just have that, trauma, I guess, with the president, but then we watched his killer or alleged killer being shot on national television. It was weird days, man. It was strange. Sorry, I got into that, but it was just one of
Yeah,
those
no, you're
things
good.
when the 26-year-olds come to me and say life's been rough since they've been around. It's always rough.
Yeah.
It's always rough, and I think the people before me, my parents and maybe their parents, they really went through. I mean, have you ever been through a worldwide depression? Again, when you there was plenty of stuff to buy, but you couldn't afford it, and you're in soup lines, and men are just doing anything they can to work a little bit to get some money, and so. Thankfully, we haven't seen those days. And, we were talking about Kevin McAllister and the grocery bill. That's almost 5 times higher now than it was then. And things are difficult, whether you're on a fixed income or whether you're in that middle class, even upper middle class section. Prices are difficult, but most of us are still blessed to be able to either have assistance or to still be able to afford those things in life. So, most of us don't lack, and the people that do really know tough times, nowadays.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and you see it. You see it in the youth, and you can look back at somebody who grew up in the 60s or even farther back, you know, and see their work ethic, see how they carry themselves, and then how they treat others and everything. And then you look at kids now growing up into adults, it's like you can definitely see like who's had it, who's had a more what is it, like stricter
mhm.
bring up than the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Well, I know. Um, I think that, excuse me, one of the main differences, I think, I'm going to clear my throat, excuse me. One of the main differences is, I think, and it's not just your age people, it's not, we've become more selfish and self-centered, I think,
uh,
over time.
yeah.
And when you're really not looking out for other people, for anybody, not just people who agree with you, but anybody who needs a hand, uh, because you just, you have yours, the big thing, well, I got mine, and then that's just wrong. There was a time when people were more selfless and would, you helped your neighbor, you, something would happen and your mom would end up watching 3 of the neighbor kids from the lady next door who had to run out because whatever happened, and they can watch their kids and feed them. And, Joe hurt himself and wasn't working for a while. So people are bringing food to Joe's family so he could eat and things like that. And you do see things like that happen now. But I just don't think you see it as often. I think we're
Yeah,
so
it's very skim.
insulated from each other.
Yeah, it's very skim, and especially like you said, in times of tragedy. I think the last time that we were in tragedy and we came together was 9/11.
Probably.
That
Yeah.
was the last time, because the pandemic, like I said, everybody, you had thought, okay, the pandemic is coming our way, we got to band together. No, what did everybody do? Everybody was an individual. It was literally the Lord of the Flies.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We were just
It was
talking about that.
literally
I was
the
talking
Lord of
about
the
that with somebody
Flies.
else the other day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And-
it's just, again, when times are tough, how are you going to act? And if times have never been tough, the first thing you do is, roll up the carpet, shut the door, and hide. And in days gone by, other people probably would have, opened their arms, opened their hearts, and tried to figure out how we can make the best out of this situation. And there's, political overtones, all that kind of stuff was involved, certainly. But if everything we do is based on what the government's reaction to something is, we've lost. We've lost the whole reason our country was founded on freedom, on not wanting the government in your pocket all the time. And I'm not anti-government. I'm a pretty conservative guy. But as you get older, you see things so many times over again. Like old guys will say, well, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's because we've seen this 3 or 4 times now by the time you get to my age. And you know what's going to happen. And you know that the first 2 times surprised everybody, but everybody kind of bucked up. And the third time was a little more difficult. And this time it was horrible because nobody was looking out for each other. And we were waiting for the government to have the answer. We have the answer. You know, the whole thing is about, I'm a Christian. And in the Bible, there's a part where Jesus is in town and some of the religious people came over to see him and they're trying to mess with him. And they said, okay, teacher, you know, what's the greatest commandment? And he said, and these are not, this particular thing he said was not in the 10 commandments that we know of, right? And Jesus said, love the Lord God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And like your neighbor isn't just who lives next door to you. Your neighbor is everybody else. And he said, you know, the love the Lord your God, that was the first important commandment. The second one, just like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And I think if we all try to look at, and it doesn't matter if you're Christian or Muslim or Jew or whatever you are, you can always love people because if you are a person of faith, we all come from a common point. You know, we're all made in the image of God, for example, whether you're Muslim or Jew or Christian. And if you don't believe in any of that, I mean, we are all connected because we're all people. You know, I mean, we have the same wants, needs, and desires typically. Now, some act on these, some act on those. But we're so similar, and over the last several years, we've tried to find the reasons we're dissimilar, so we can argue about it or fight about it. You know, it's just, and that's too bad. I mean, there's always been problems and issues and crap. I mean, the good old days were only good because we were young, and those were our fondest memories, right?
Yeah.
High school and stuff like. I mean, that's why people talk about. You'll talk about the good old days at some point in your life. Because it was.
I'm already doing it with what is it like with different friends and stuff like that who I've been friends with since high school, or if I bump into somebody from high school, we'll talk about the old days. Like I just had a guy who graduated with my brother, but played football with me, I guess. He was in the football program, from the time he was a freshman all the way till he was a senior. But of course, when I was a senior, he was a sophomore. And then when we went to playoffs, he came up, him and his brother and a couple other guys were brought up to work with us and stuff like that. And, we were reminiscing about the old days and talking about those kinds of stuff. So it was an absolute blast because it always brings you back to that time in your childhood or growing up, and it literally has your mind kind of like show like a little movie of a memory.
Absolutely,
which is fascinating how the mind works. You know what I mean?
I know it was those times when you're footloose and fancy free. I mean, we didn't have a lot of responsibility,
right.
As teens. I mean, we had some, of course, but the life, adulting, which I hate that term, but is quite a bit different than when you're just hanging around having fun most of the time.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's always the good old days for however you're old, whether you're 26 or 66 or somewhere in between. There's always a good old days somewhere when things seem simpler, easier, and better. But it just seemed that way because we were having such a blast.
Right.
And when you grow up, it's not a blast every day.
Right. So, but you were saying about, Jesus and everything like that. It's Christmas time, as you can tell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what is your favorite part about Christmas?
As a kid, of course, you were looking forward to presents.
Of course.
And the lights and the tree, it was magical. I was telling my wife a little story when I was younger. Our Christmas tree was always in a corner of the living room. We lived in a kind of a small house, but I would crawl behind the tree and sit up in the corner behind the Christmas tree, just looking at the ornaments on that side. And we had so many of these ornaments that would reflect your face, and your nose would get really big and stuff. But it was like hanging out with the Christmas tree and then just enjoying every moment. And I know it seems weird, but it's a great memory that I have, because it was just that time, when I had my own little celebration in the corner there when I go back
Right.
there. But nowadays, I'm again, it's when you've been through things time and time and time again. Some things wear thin, and so for me, it really is. I have grandkids now, and you want to make it fun for them, certainly. But for me, I would just look forward to going to church. I like the more I'd say religious, but the Christian type of Christmas songs, "Oh Holy Night" and "Silent Night" and those kind of things.
Yeah.
I'm really sick of "Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer" and "I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas" and all these songs that radio stations play so they don't upset anybody with the religious tone of the other songs. But
Right.
and that's okay. I mean, that's fine. Cool. And we have access to all this music anywhere all the time we are, through our phones, through our laptops, through whatever we're using. And so I can enjoy my stuff and you can enjoy yours, and that's cool. And if you like Grandma, I mean, I laughed to "Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer" for many, many years, and just kind of done hearing it, and I think for me, the thinking about the actual story of Christmas and the birth of Christ is a tremendous story. If you sit back and want to listen to it, it's awesome, amazing. I mean, Joseph and Mary had to walk across the desert, let's say, to go be part of a census in Bethlehem. And back then, a man wasn't a man until he was about 30 years old. I mean, you became an adult male kind of thing at 30. And so Joseph was probably 30 or in his 30s. Well, many times the wives were much younger, 16, 17, kind of years old.
Wasn't she about 13, 14 years old?
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, and people get mad at Jesus now or something. But yes, so you have this whole different thing. This very young woman who an angel of God stood before and said, "Hey, you're highly favored by God. You're going to be pregnant, and this child's going to change the world." And she said, she was, "Well, how does it be? I haven't been with a man." And he said, "We'll cover it," kind of thing. The Holy Spirit will do it. And she said, "Well, let it be to me as you have said." How cool is that? How many times in your life has somebody told you something just weirdly fantastic and said, "Okay, if that's what you say, that's what it is." But this is what the young teenage girl did when an angel is standing before her who stands in the presence of God. So their trek across the desert, there was no place to stay, so they're in this barn, and the manger itself is a feeding trough for the animals. So the baby's put in this feeding trough, and the first people to come were the shepherds. As a host of angels said, "Boy, you got to go see this Savior who's born in Bethlehem tonight." It's a great, great, great story.
Yeah, and even more details into that is, Joseph had just married Mary, and and then she's like, "Hey, Joseph's, I'm pregnant," and he's like, "With whose baby?"
Exactly. Yeah.
And of course he's like, I'm gonna get so much crap from everybody, and I'm gonna be looked at, and this is like a big sin and stuff like that.
I mean, she could have been stoned to death, kind of thing. That's how serious that was. And as the story evolves in the Bible, where Joseph had plans to quietly divorce her, that's written right there.
It
and
is.
then the angel came to him and said, "Hey, that baby is through the Holy Spirit, and this child's going to grow up and be something special, and you have to be part of this up to a point." And for being a guy and your new wife is pregnant, not by you, and this, whether it's a vision or whether it was literally an angel of God, says, "Hey, you kind of got to go through with this because this is what's happening, and we'll make sure to take care of you," kind of thing. And he went with that.
Yeah.
Amazing stories of faith. you know.
Yeah, I mean, I had a buddy of mine that kind of had the same situation. He got with this woman who was already pregnant by another man, and that the father of the baby didn't stick around and all that stuff. So she was pregnant when they got together, and so my former buddy, um, he was with her every step of the way, went to every doctor's appointment, and then when that baby came, it was like that was he loved that child with with all of his heart, and and helped raise that child, and it's such an interesting uh way that somebody could do that. You know what I mean? Because
Well,
that doesn't
see, that's
happen
that's a
often.
man right there. That's a grown man. That's talking about being selfless, you know.
Yeah.
And he obviously he loved the young lady, and in spite of where she was in her life, not only was he going to accept her, but he was going to accept the child. And that's a full grown adult right there. It doesn't matter if he was 17 or 57. You know.
Right. And I mean, people joke about how Joseph was like the honorary stepdad.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And every stepdad is probably like, "Yep, know that how that feels." Because
I had a stepdad, you know.
because it
Uh,
almost because there's a joke about how, like, if Joseph was trying to discipline Jesus, he was probably like, "You're not my dad."
yeah,
You
when
know
you
what I
think
mean?
about things like it is kind of funny, and but if you're, I guess I don't think the Catholics believe that Jesus had brothers and sisters, but uh, I do, as it's written, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
Joseph and Mary did have kind of a normal, married life at some point after that.
Oh,
So
of course, of course.
yeah,
Now, what is so fascinating is, I don't know if it's just my knowledge of the Bible and whatnot, but it seems like Joseph just disappears.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
it
mean?
does,
Be-
absolutely.
Like, it just seems like he disappears, and then there's just Jesus and Mary, and until his crucifixion.
And it's if Joseph was about 30 years old because he was a grown man when he took his wife, well, he
Right.
would have been about when Jesus started his ministry. Joseph would have been about 60 then. When Jesus turned 30, he started the ministry.
Right.
So in those years, I mean, he could have very well just passed away and died. I don't think he ran away, but
Right.
and because we don't really know what happened to Mary either. I mean, Jesus told one of the disciples to take care of her, like, this is your mother, this is your son, kind of thing from the
Right.
cross. And we don't know really what her end story was either. And then the thing about that is, I believe that, their part in the play, was in the first act, you know,
Right.
and the second act, they didn't need those characters, kind of thing. So their part of the
Right.
play ended because their importance to everything was complete. And of course we knew Mary was around till the end for Jesus and the crucifixion. But yeah, we don't know what happened to Joseph, but I just think it's because um, there was no need for him in that picture, especially once Jesus was kind of an older kid and an adult, because he has one father who is God, of course.
Yeah, and also the life expectancy as well was not that high if you
No,
look at
yeah,
it.
I mean, there's you could catch a cold and die. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's just there was
Right.
a lot of things that movie. Um, a Million Ways to Die in the West or
Ah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
and that was there are several ways to do that in the old country too.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. So, um, but you were also talking about songs and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Now, you said Mama Got Run Over by a Reindeer was an old classic, and you said Oh Holy Night and Silent Night is now your new favorite.
Yeah.
So, what would be your like top 5 favorite like Christmas songs?
Oh Holy Night is number one.
Gotcha.
Absolutely, every time. Yeah, it just is. Um, and maybe in no other order, but the top five. There's the Christmas song. It's called. chestnuts roasting. I don't know. I love that
The Nat King Cole
song.
version.
The Nat King Cole version is awesome, and that's actually
Good choice.
I have the CD with that one. So
I
CD or
heard it's.
compact disc, kids.
I was gonna say vinyl. Vinyl's coming back.
Well, we still. I think I have a couple of old my parents' Nat King Cole records on vinyl still. So
That's amazing.
But so the Christmas song, "Oh Holy Night," "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," I think is a cool one. Just because again, it just is about the night that everything really happened. And then Silent Night's always a great one. And there's so many. There's about 4 or 5 verses, but you hardly ever hear except the one.
Right.
And it's a great song all the way through. And the story about Silent Night, the actual story about the making of the song, is incredible. And so that's 4. And then 5. I'd probably say "Joy to the World." The Lord has come, let earth receive her King. But I do enjoy the Christmas song. I don't mind Mariah Carey's song "All I Want for Christmas Is You." Now there's another song that this might be tied in that top 5, and it's a kind of a wacky song too. It's called "All I Want for Christmas Is You," but it was from the '60s, maybe early '70s, and the group was Vince Vance and the Valiants.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's I think it's a wonderful Christmassy kind of song. All I want for, and it's a little more sultry than Mariah Carey's song.
Kind
and
of
it's
pop.
a little
Yeah, hers is very pop and upbeat. Whereas
and this is a little more adult, I guess, maybe if you put it. Yeah.
I wonder
And
if
so
I
think that is one of my favorite ones to hear. During the time too. I'll probably look that one up on YouTube. 15 times before New Year's. I think it's because I enjoy it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. Of course, you can't beat the king of rock and roll, Mr. Elvis Presley, with "Here Comes Santa Claus" and "Blue Christmas." But one of my all-time favorites, I would say it's about number 1, is "Santa Claus is Back in Town," where it goes
Santa Claus is coming to town?
No, Santa Claus is back in town.
Okay.
Where it goes Christmas, bing bong, Christmas, bing bong.
That's a fun song.
Oh my gosh,
I forgot about that
it's
one.
beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and it's so bluesy. I love it.
Yeah. Well, there's an Eagles song.
I know exactly which one you're
"Please
gonna
Come Home
say.
for Christmas."
Yes.
I think is the name of the song, and that's there's too much room for 5. There's too many songs.
I know.
I look forward to hearing that one. I heard it the other day and said, and it's again, it's not necessarily a cute pack your Christmas away and open the presents and have a great time. It's somebody who really longs to see his special person there during the holidays, and they're away. Please come home for Christmas.
Right,
It's
exactly.
Kind of neat. Yeah.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that there are different songs for different types of meanings and everything, and with that being said, I mean, there's of course the constant ones about the characters like "Run Rudolph Run" or "Frosty the Snowman" or "Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer." You got those ones, but it's also got different meanings like "Baby, Please Come Home," for Christmas, which has been covered multiple times from, I believe it was the Ronettes to
yes, I don't know.
Ronettes, or it was trying to remember the other ones, but it was on that Phil Spector album. And so you got all those ones, and then of course you got the "All I Want for Christmas Is You," and "Present Under My Tree" or something like that, and
Santa Baby's kind of fun, and a lot of
Santa
people
Baby
who
is
are
interesting,
religious people that don't necessarily like Santa Baby so much, but it's just a cool, fun song. This is an adult Christmas we're talking about here, Santa.
Yeah, and of course you got those songs that kind of sprinkle the little curiousness in a child's mind for sure. Like
Oh yeah.
I saw
Hmm.
I saw mommy kissing Santa Claus. Daddy looked a lot like Santa,
Hmm.
or yeah, Santa looked a lot like Daddy or something
Yeah,
like
whichever
that.
way it goes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what
I
it
have a
literally
couple of
says that
those.
in the
Yeah. Oh yeah.
chorus, but yeah. So you
It's
get those little hints and everything, but it's so
mhm.
fascinating. It's so fascinating.
And
Now,
it's a great time for kids. I mean, I would
yeah,
never begrudge a kid to have their whole Santa Claus thing and looking for presents. I'm not that uptight. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing my grandkids opening presents and going a little wild and just having fun. I mean, they're enjoying the tree at their house now, and they were making Christmas cookies with their mom today. She sent us a little video, and it's a great time. Christmas is for kids, that part where again it's the good old days, right? They'll be the
yeah,
best times of their lives when they look back at these Christmases with Santa and all that kind of thing. So that's
absolutely.
neat.
Now, what's your favorite Christmas cookie? Now that we're on the topic of cookies, gotta start it off with that one.
Well, I don't know if this is really a Christmas cookie, but my wife only makes them around Christmas time, snickerdoodles,
Oh,
which
I would consider that. Yeah,
I really
it's
like
a
those.
Christmas dessert. Yeah,
But you can get me just those, those cutout Santas and snowmen, the traditional, I guess they're like shortbread Christmas cookies. I mean, that's
yeah.
fine too, but sit me down with snickerdoodles and some milk, and I could cause some real havoc. So.
Now, with the what is it? The Pillsbury Doughboys. What is it? The Christmas cookies with that you just you cut up a little bit
Oh
and you
yeah,
just
yeah.
throw them into the oven, and they got the characters printed on them. Those ones, I can't get enough of them. I absolutely love them.
If I was a single guy and didn't have to deal with the repercussions from my wife, I'd have those in the fridge all the time. Freeze them for the summertime and things
Right?
like that. A lot of the schools have the fundraisers when it gets close to Christmas, and you can buy like tubs of cookie dough, and so you just like scoop out and make your chocolate chip or your Christmas cookies.
Yeah.
And those things, that used to drive me crazy because they're like, well, do I eat it out of the bucket or do I actually bake these cookies?
Right, right. And it's funny that you say that because I actually last night I went to Kroger and I ended up getting chocolate chip cookie dough of 3 different kinds. Like there was a big container and then there was a mini container that you can just eat right out of. And I'm like, I got a problem. I like cookie dough. I love
and
cookie dough ice cream so much.
so many people do. It's weirdly amazing. I remember being a kid, and my mom would always kind of let us check the batter until people said, "Well, you'll die of salmonella or whatever it is,"
Oh
from
yeah.
the raw eggs. But I don't know. I saw Rocky eat a whole bunch of eggs, raw eggs.
And I've honestly heard doctors say that I think was just for the movie. Don't be drinking raw eggs because you will get sick.
Yeah, people. But seriously, it was one of the things that the kind of the He-Men bodybuilders and stuff would do, and some trainers would do,
Yeah.
because they knew it was a source of protein, but it was also
What,
sort of bacterial infection.
yeah. I mean, what cracks me up is what was it? Yesterday, I think it was. I did a little workout, and then I'm home and making my protein shake and everything. And I got the powder, put the creatine in there, and then put a little slab of peanut butter. And then I thought to myself, what if I put a raw egg in there? Didn't end up doing it because then I was like, I don't even know if that would taste good, and I'm like,
I'd have to be ready for that. Yeah, I don't think I
yeah.
could just come off with that in the spur. I really have no desire to eat a raw egg, to tell you the truth, or drink it. Now, I think if you had separated the egg and put the white in there, you might end up getting a little fluffier thing because of the egg whites. But I don't think it'll do it with
Yeah.
the yolk. But I wouldn't do that either.
Well, and what fascinates me is I call myself an alcohol enthusiast,
Okay.
not an alcoholic. You know what I'm saying? Love the enjoyment of how the alcohol is made, and how there's different tastes and different, kind of everything is always different, and you can compare the two, and it's all fun like that.
Mhm.
So. But what fascinates me is when you make a cocktail and it's got that like foamy top onto it. Like say if you get like a coffee martini or something
Mm.
like that, or if you get a amaretto sour and you have the works, pretty much is what they one place said. Like, do you want the works? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like
Of course I do.
thinking that they're just gonna garnish the crap out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So but yeah, I mean, they put a raw egg in or without the yolk, I believe it is. It's just the white
Yeah.
part, and then they shake it up, and then out comes this foaminess, and
Yeah.
it absolutely fascinates me.
Yeah,
That it
it's
turns
one of
into
those
that.
things they've been using for tricks that goes way back. You know, old time bartenders would do that to add a little pizzazz.
Yes.
I spent a lot of time in the bar business and restaurant business.
Oh, did you
and so
really?
it does, yeah, and over 20 years probably, and you know, it did fascinate me too. I love finding out about beers and I love finding out about wines, and like you said with liquors, where you'll have 5 different bourbons in front of you in the same price point, and you'll
Yeah.
get 5 different flavors, 5 different stylings. Pretty much, even vodka, which is grain neutral spirit, man. It's just basically watered down moonshine, right? That's what vodka is. But
Oh,
depending on how you use the quality of ingredients, there are differences in vodkas. Some are cleaner and leaner, some are almost buttery and things. And so it's a lot of fun to, say you're doing it for homework, but to work your way through the world of alcohol and be an enthusiast, certainly.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So, how long did you work in the bar business for?
About 25 years, yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And what did you do there? Like, did you
I
bartend?
started out
and-
as a dishwasher, kind of thing,
Yeah.
and I waited tables, and I was a bartender, and I was a host and a cook, and the last many years I was typically general manager of various restaurant bars. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so but
That's so
but
fascinating.
I thought because sometimes restaurant managers are just a guy who will stay sober enough through a shift to lock up at the end and I put the money away. And
Right.
I always hated those guys. Not hated them, but I felt as a restaurant manager, we got a bad rap from some of those guys because, at least I was a business manager and a budget forecaster and an employee recruiter, hirer, and trainer. And, very much involved with the people that we worked with. I always looked at every day at a restaurant and bar, putting on a show. Like putting on a Broadway show every day,
Yeah.
and when you do it that way, it's just a riot,
Wow. And so you did that for X amount of years. I remember seeing a older picture of you. What was it? Sitting at a desk. You're in a maroon 1970s outfit, 3-piece suit, looking all fly. And as you guys used to say, jive.
I don't think we said that in Garden City where I grew up, but
Right.
no, it's no, I
It's looking like
you know,
I mean, you looked like a car salesman.
my dad gave me one piece of advice, and he left our family at some point, and but before he did, he said, "Son, sometime in your life, somebody's going to tell you you should sell cars. Don't do it." So I've never been a car salesman. So why, Dad? Nobody trusts them. They're all mouth and no brains. Blah blah blah. It was kind of funny. So never. Somebody's going to tell you you should sell cars. Don't do it.
And what's so funny is one of my cousins. He's a car salesman. So shout out to Jonathan Boyd.
Jonathan, you're one of the good ones, Jonathan. Really. No, I don't believe that. Obviously, it was a different time. I mean, we're talking 50 years ago when guys would do anything to put you in a car. Anything like anything. So
Yeah. So you worked in the bar business for 25 years. Was there anything was there anything else that you did before, like
a lot of things.
you did? And what would those things be?
I drove a bread truck when I lived in Chicago. So I was a bread delivery man to restaurants and supermarkets. I got that job through the restaurant business, so I'd taken a sidetrack for a while. And I was a Teamster bread man. And this was 1976. And I was grossing $1,000 a week in 1976 delivering bread. Yeah, I don't think that happens anymore. But being a union bread man, I mean, you made some bread, kind of thing. But yeah, it was a weird life, but it was a good life. And when you just needed to store up some money for a while, that worked really well. But I was in sales. I was in worked for a company here in Michigan called Wright and Philippus. It was a medical supply company, but I was part of the barrier-free division where we did accessibility ramps for people, home modifications, and specifically for me, I was in the lift, elevator, and ramp department where we'd get little chairs on the track that go up and down the stairs, like in Gremlins, where the lady shoots through the roof.
Uh-huh.
Well, we sold those, and lifts so you can get a wheelchair up on a porch, kind of thing, plus small elevators. So I did that for about a dozen years too, and there was that sales job was neat because it was more of a relational thing. It wasn't a sign today and I'll save you $30 and give you white walls. It wasn't that at all. It was trying to develop a relationship, seeing if we had something that would work for the person, and then if they could afford it, it worked well for them. So that was fun. But one of my weirder things was, like, I got through the bar business too. Was I traveled North America with the Hanson brothers from the movie Slapshot on behalf of Bud Ice Beer back in 96, 97, around there. So a fella who came into my bar saw we were doing a particular promotion with race cars.
Mm.
And he said, I'm working with these guys, blah, blah, blah. And so he actually did Denny McClain and Eli Zaret had a sports show on TV for a while. It's going back. And so they shot an episode with the Hanson brothers with these race cars in the restaurant I was with. So we had a great idea that, hockey was just, I think Bettman was just coming in as the commissioner, and hockey was growing and expanding. And so we thought, well, ice hockey, ice beer, and the Hanson brothers, what's easier to sell? Well, it was hard to sell, but then Anheuser-Busch did pick us up. And so we traveled with the guys to arenas and bars and restaurants and Anheuser-Busch conventions, etc. So that was weird, wacky, cool, hard, fun. Yeah, so.
Oh, okay. Now, what wanted you to get into broadcasting? Like, what brought you to Specs Howard School of Media Arts?
I always wanted to be a radio guy. I got to grow up with Ernie Harwell and Ray Lane, actually, on the Tiger broadcasts. And there was an announcer for WJBK TV2 Detroit. I don't know if stations still have announcers anymore, but if there was something going on, he'd announce it. His name was Emmett Capper, and he had this really great voice. It's like, join the Capuchin monks at the soup kitchen and blah, blah, blah. And it just captivated me. And then when I started, really listening to the radio and hearing the personalities and how it felt when I was listening, and even as a teen, with the glorious WRIF that was around with Jim Johnson and the Morning Crew and Ken Calvert, Karen Savelli, Arthur P., of course, Arthur Penhowell, et cetera, et cetera. What a great time to listen to radio. These personalities were big. The music was the music of our time, which was great. But I always felt that, and there was always somebody live on the radio back then too. CKLW, of course, the Big 8 was huge. But so whether you were working as a teen late or up late or whatever, there was that guy in the studio talking to you at, 12:30 a.m., 1 a.m., 4 p.m., whatever it was. And the ones who were magical made a connection with individual people, like they were broadcasting to tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, depending on the station. And they're broadcasting, obviously, to everybody. But the magic was when that person on the radio could get you to think they were just kind of like we're doing, sharing a conversation with you. And I thought that was magical, how you can be there for everybody and you can be there for each individual person. And I just thought that would be the neatest thing to do. And I love music, of course. But I think the personal connection that I made with those radio personalities really drew me to do that. Now, life takes you in different directions. I always told people, I was in the bar business for all that time, I was in sales, did the Hanson Brothers thing, and, bread truck driver and whatever. And I always told people it always felt like I was wearing the wrong size shoes. Like I could get away with it, but it just didn't feel right.
Right.
And when I went to Specs and I got out and I got my first radio job, driving to Saginaw from Royal Oak, 83 miles one way to work midnights, it was the coolest thing in the world. It was the best thing ever. And then the first time somebody called me and, told me I was an a-hole, and the first time somebody called and said they really enjoyed the show and what was going on, those are both cool things because people were listening. So that, those are the individuals, right? I talked
You got
to that
a
guy, he didn't
reaction
like
out of
it.
people. Yeah.
I mean, really, it's like no publicity is bad publicity.
Right.
You like to get a reaction from people. And so I just felt so comfortable and I loved doing it. And when I was at Q Country 107 Radio First, I ended up doing the, right after Chuck Santoni. So I was doing, gosh, I think I started at
midnight.
4.
6 to
no,
midnight.
they changed it. And so I was like 4 to, I can't even remember, 3 to 7 or 3 to 8 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Because Chuck was doing, I think, live then, where Matt goes to noon now. He was going to 10, so Santoni moved, back anyway.
Okay.
And I was kind of, and that happened around Christmas time, 2019. Key years to remember. And they were happy with what I was doing. And it was just the best thing in the world to come in every day in a normal time part of the day. And, you got callers and games and things you're doing and doing the traffic report, which in Port Huron wasn't really too exciting most of the time unless something was going on the bridge. But
there was definitely a lot of stuff going on, especially during the summertime with the boat season.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd made it, man. And I still wasn't making a lot of money. I was still a part-timer doing this 5 days a week. But I thought I'm going to settle into this groove and things are going to be great. And I was just so happy. And then they laid all the part-timers off when COVID hit.
Okay. That was my next question. Like, who left first, me or you? And now I get it. It was me.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah. And it was just, we had people around the clock, many hours on BTI, and I mean, I was left with about 6 people, I think, running all the 5 stations, whatever it is.
it was about 4 because you had the pop station WBTI, you had and then you had the sports news station on
PHM.
PHM, which was the AM station, and then you had the rock station, and then the country station,
and the hills.
So there were 5.
Yeah. And so literally, I think there were 8 people, doing the 5 stations, and of course a lot of us tracked and they updated their automation at that time, so they didn't need as many people, and I mean, that was kind of it. I was brought back to work the call-in show on Sundays in 2020. I was able to qualify under the, what was that, the PUP funds or whatever it was. So, it was the most money I ever made in radio when I worked one day, and you got paid quite good from those PUP funds based on your hours and stuff like that. But I was doing one day request show. And then I'd go on my merry way on Sunday mornings, which was fun. But yeah, I just always thought that was going to be my radio. I thought I just lucked out, man. And this is the coolest thing in the world. And it kind of fell apart, and the folks in Saginaw needed some people. They fired their program director and somebody else, and they were kind of ravaged by COVID. So I picked up some hours back in my first stop, and talked 103.9 The Fox into hiring me, for one day a week, which was a blast. I got to do that. And actually, Radio First called me, and for a while in the fall of 2021, I was working some kind of fill-in shifts for a while too. So, I got around. I was just offered a job actually in Alpena to be the midday guy on an oldies station up there, and I just it was pretty good money and it was a cool situation, and I just couldn't make it work, which is too bad. So
Yeah. I mean,
so
it's
that would have been great.
Alpena, so that makes sense.
Well, you had to find a place to live, and the housing is tight everywhere. But you get into these smaller towns and kind of even in Alpena, people will buy these houses and turn them into Airbnbs.
Yeah.
So there's not rentals out there available for people, and the housing shortage is a real thing. Traverse City is seeing it certainly. Alpena, even the southwest corner of the state, because the Airbnb business is so big now.
Interesting.
So we
So
just couldn't find a place to live, basically.
yeah. So what's next for you? In the broadcasting, whether if it's podcasting or doing the Fox flicks, like what's new or what's to come?
Well, I enjoy my Sunday fun days on Fox Flicks there because it's the bits I would have done on the radio, and it just reminds me of what fun I had there. The next thing I'll do is fix this mic because it kind of fell apart while I was talking to you here. Sorry, I've been messing with it the whole time.
Well, the good thing is I can still hear you, so
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
But I still have hopes that there's a spot for me somewhere at some station somewhere. Probably a small town, a smaller station at this point. One thing I know that like many businesses, they really appreciate younger talent, so I'm an old guy with not a ton of experience. So, I'm not. I lost a job. I lost a job in Traverse City on a classic rock station, which would have been an awesome gig, to a guy who had been at CSX for years and had name recognition, and he applied later. I'm thinking I'm on deck. Here you go. This will be cool, and I'd love to move to that area. And I lost out. So there's still been some things out there, since I left the Fox, and again. I have been treated well personally by everybody in radio that I've worked for, and that's nice. I mean, you can always complain about money. You can always complain about wanting more responsibility or this or that or the other things. But when people treat you like a human being and treat you well, that's such a key in life. After working a whole lifetime, those people who appreciate you for you. Sometimes they're few and far between in the workforce. And so I got to say, whether it was Radio First or McDonald Broadcasting, Kroll Communications, I hope I didn't miss anybody along the way, but they've all been great to work with and work for. So that's been a blessing.
Yeah, and I can definitely say, even though the money wasn't there, which from a now 26-year-old guy, you need a good amount of money to live in this world, and so that was always a struggle. When I was 21, 22 years old, so in trying to figure out the world, working for a radio station that paid you minimum wage, it just didn't feel right. So I had to move on. But, the friendships and the connections and different things like that I've made along the way. Oh, absolutely.
Well, even this one, I mean, we're not like drinking buddies or anything, but we've connected on social media over the years. I enjoy seeing your posts. And like I said, I've checked in the podcast from now and again. And it is a kind of a family of people scattered all over the place as people leave stations and go to other ones and around. It's really neat. So,
Absolutely. Well, Ernie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're kicking me out? I'm just getting warmed up, man. I got decades of stories to share with you still.
Well, we'll make sure to have you on again. I promise you that, because
I
if
hope
you got
everybody
that many
doesn't fall
stories.
asleep when they're listening to
Oh, of course not. I mean, I think the conversation that we had, we talked about Christmas and the story of Christmas and, president assassinations and, just how humanity is. So,
if you can get edited before Christmas, we're in good shape. So.
Oh yeah. I think we did just fine. So to where I don't have to edit much. So, but Ernie, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll definitely have to have you back. And until then, I hope you and your family have a very Merry Christmas.
Thanks, man. Thanks for inviting me to do this too, and Merry Christmas to you and your family. And I just trust the new year will be a great year for you.
Oh yeah, I can definitely feel that. So thanks a lot.
Bye.